Hi everyone, my name is Adriana Mancuso and I am making this video presentation because I've been thinking a lot about light recently and I wanted to share it with everyone and perhaps get some feedback or other ideas for further research. I will be at the end of the video talking about some topics that I'll be looking into, as well as 2 questions, but if anyone has any other ideas or suggestions for further research, please comment on this video. At the same time, I created a PowerPoint presentation, which you should see on your screen. And hopefully the images help you understand what I'm saying a bit better. So let's get into it. So I called these the tenets of Source because I've been thinking a lot about light and Source in general. And we'll talk about names later on as well, but this is what I've been thinking of recently. So, Source has no beginning and no end. Source's awareness of itself has a beginning. Source is eternal. Source is free will. Source contains all lightness and all darkness. Separation is an illusion. Source is being. Source is isness. And Source is. Here's a disclaimer. I figured I should include this should anyone take issue with my viewpoint, but I'm sure someone will. The following paper is a compilation of observations that have become more apparent to me as time progresses. I seek to understand what it is I am seeing, what is clearly visible and what is not. I have made reductions and simplifications only for the purpose of illustrating my observations in a manner that allows for further contemplation. These simplifications might provide the consequence of creating grand leaps in thought, which, depending on the audience, might become the reason to discredit the information presented or allow for the opening of creative, critical thought. I must tread carefully and speak correctly, for any faltering will give ammunition to those who seek a battle. My view is radical, controversial, and for some, perhaps will incite feelings of disapproval at best and anger or hatred at worst. I seek only to speak my own truth, now that I feel at liberty to do so. Please forgive me for any offense taken. This image I took from my balcony where I live. I live on the northern side of Sicily, and I am blessed to see beautiful sunsets regularly, at least every other night. And this image, I played around with the ISO a little bit, but I wanted to see the difference between light and dark and how obvious the gradient of colors is as well. A sunset is the perfect visual evidence for what I'll be describing today. During a sunset, light is still seen in the sky while the ground below begins to get a bit darker. Even without the sun in full view, light remains. The 2 aspects of life that we observe every day are light and dark. They dictate much of our habits, activities, and survival. In the daytime, no matter the weather, our world is illuminated by the sun. At night, a still darkness presides. I will focus on light, for without it, there would be no life. We are able to see the world around us thanks to light. We can easily see its effects on animals, plant life, and us. We feel its warmth. However, we do not see with our naked eyes its frequency, vibration, or electromagnetic waves. We can only observe the physical effects of light on this material plane. We can readily observe, with the use of technology, electricity, particles, electromagnetic waves, vibrations, and the visible light spectrum. Whatever it might be, if it exists in our world as we perceive it, then it must have originated from a source, from whether within or without our reality. What was the original catalyst for light? Some would expect you to believe in a Big Bang that created all life, that it was random, a fluke, and nothing more. But we live in a dynamic, dualistic universe of cause and effect, action and consequence. Nothing is random. With the correct combination of elements, a spark must cause a fire. The laws of our universe dictate hierarchies, structures, and cause and effect relationships. Suppose for a moment that this Big Bang were true, but its reality is different than what we have been told. What could have triggered such a marvelous explosion that had the effect of creating our known universe? Surely it must have been an incomprehensible power of magnitudes infinitesimally greater than we can imagine. Was the Big Bang a singular event that had happened only once in the history of the universe? Or, rather, is it a recurring process that creates parallel universes? Is each new Big Bang a new level of awareness? Is every new parallel universe a new playground, so to speak, where all the same laws apply, but events and consequences are different? And is there a purpose to it all? Was the Big Bang an explosion as we know them, or rather an epiphany? Consider for a moment the lit light bulb as a symbol of a sudden realization or understanding. Why is the sudden appearance of light the metaphor for awareness? Does an epiphany require forethought? And if yes, does this also not imply intelligence as a form of being alive? As light reveals what is hidden in darkness, it is a perfect metaphor for going from a misunderstanding to a sudden understanding. The creator of this universe, suddenly becoming aware of itself, explodes in a flash of light and creates our universe. Was this the Big Bang? In the act of knowing itself, the creator experienced itself as itself, thus creating a universe in full knowledge, wisdom, and light. And so light is God-mind. Light is the first sacred creation of this universe. From this light, all life sprang forth. We live in a universe of structures, hierarchies, and cause and effect because these are the consequences of the moving, active light that expanded when Source became aware of itself. Light is awareness, is thought, is Source. Therefore, Source is all there is, because Source just is. Notice how these seemingly separate elements are actually all manifestations of the same thing. They appear to be different, individual, but they are not. Why can we interact with these on a physical level? Examine this diagram of how they manifest on the physical plane. The waves, the type of wavelength, the scales, frequencies, and temperatures. I do not understand the mathematics involved, but I still understand that these energies, frequencies, and vibrations are the very fabric of our universe. White light is a combination of all colors in the spectrum. And the perception of color is the eye's perception of different wavelengths of light. Light is a vibration in the electromagnetic field, and sound is a vibration in a gas, liquid, or solid. White light, including sunlight, contains all the wavelengths and frequencies of the visible light spectrum. The colors, densities of objects, and all of physical reality as we see it are expressions and manifestations of energies, frequencies, and vibrations. If all frequencies and vibrations were the same and synchronized harmoniously, there would be no physical plane, and all would be a giant mass of the same. Why do humans float in water? The physical reasons are because we are made of water, we have oxygen in our bodies, and a large body of water is denser than we are. However, energetically, these are all different frequencies and vibrations colliding against each other to create a physical reality. Why can we sit on objects? Why do we not go through everything if everything is energy? Whenever there are different energies, frequencies, and vibrations that interact, it is the difference in this interaction that creates our physical surroundings. Energy, frequency, and vibration is light. And our minds perceive these factors of light as our physical world. As Nikola Tesla once said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. If light naturally has a high frequency and high vibration due to its containment of all wavelengths and frequencies, does it not follow that we too should emanate a high frequency and vibration for our well-being and to be closer to Source? All is within white light, even the dark. This is a pretty famous scene. We don't need to go into too much detail about color theory here, but we can say that Luke Skywalker represents good and Darth Vader represents evil. If we go back to our visible light spectrum as well as the color wheel, we see that blue and orange are complementary colors, and they are visible in the image as well. Those colors are chosen specifically. But also, blue is nearing the center of this frequency scale here, meaning it's close to being a balanced sort of color. And in terms of temperature, blue is the hottest and red and black are the coldest. This makes me think of the phrase warm-hearted people or cold-hearted people. The emotion of love is widely accepted as being the highest, fastest frequency and vibration, whereas its counterpart, fear and hatred, is the lowest and slowest. For some fascinating and beautiful visual evidence of our power with love and light, as well as its counterparts, take a look at Masaru Emoto's work and his book, The Hidden Messages in Water. His hypothesis, which was proven positive by his extensive documentation, was that water could react to both positive and negative thoughts, or phrases, spoken out loud, the outcomes of which produced either beautiful symmetrical shapes or ugly distorted ones. I'll let you look at these images and read their captions for a moment here. There's 2 slides, this one and another one. Consider too that some wine growers play classical music about love to help their grapes grow. Why? Plants are made of the physical, chemical components of life, as well as energies, frequencies, and vibrations. Because sound is another expression of energy, frequency, and vibration, and love is the highest form of these, the natural world is thus influenced by the energies, frequencies, and vibrations working upon it. Consider also the human body. We are made of the same components as everything else. Light, sound, colors are perceived by us and we react accordingly. The colors of the chakras correspond with the colors of the visible light spectrum. We can apply chakra blockages or overactivity to many people in the world today. But for fun, let's look at the Star Wars example one last time. The root chakra is red, and the throat chakra is blue. When the red chakra is blocked, a person is greedy, aggressive, fearful, insecure, feels self-pity, lust for power, is materialistic, and cynical. And these describe Darth Vader pretty perfectly. When the throat chakra is open, a person is expressive, trustworthy, a good communicator, and honest. Arguably, the traits of Luke Skywalker. Sure, we can spend all day arguing about Lucas's own knowledge of color theory and chakras and using those as a tool to create his characters and his stories. Or we can look at the similarities between the attributes of colors, the human body and system, and light and see the bigger picture. But in the end, we'd just be arguing and saying the same thing, only in different words. Some might call Source the creator. All that is, cosmic consciousness, one creator, the law of one, universal mind, cosmic mind, supreme being, God, God mind, because everything exists within Source, and Source is everything. All of these names are valid expressions of Source, but they also cause division. In Source, everything is possible. And that's why I've written all of these various spiritualities here. And of course there are more. These are just the first ones that came to mind. There's tons more. But Source includes everything. And so everything is legitimate. I would like to point out that I am quite aware of circular arguments about the beginnings of humanity and religion. Some of these include: did religion occur as humanity became consciously aware of itself and of another power that governs life? And how did humanity become conscious? Then, over time, did humanity create the gods themselves simply by thinking them into being? Some might say, however it began, whatever structures and beliefs are present in the world, it is because humanity created them and continues to create them. In the same vein of questioning, am I also creating Source and naming Source? Or is Source experiencing itself through me, thus continuously recreating itself? It's a catch-22. Is it the chicken or the egg first? Worse still, is not this line of questioning meant to confuse you rather than point in any particular direction, which in the end causes one to choose no direction at all? This being said, as we saw before, all beliefs or non-beliefs exist within Source. This is what I like to call, for lack of a better word, the Source sandwich. So the bread is light, Source, the macrocosm. And within it is the microcosm, us, every plane of reality, and Source basically encompasses everything. If you consider us to be the lettuce, there are planes above us and planes below us, but all in all, we are still part of Source. Here, one might encounter a potential moral and philosophical quandary. Many do not see past good and evil in our universe. That both are happening simultaneously is confusing for many. The question is always, if God is good, why is there evil? It is here where they do not seek further and stop at the plateau of the God pantheon. This question implies that there is a separation between good and evil, but there is no separation, as they are both part of Source. So there is neither good nor evil, but rather light and dark. In regards to the evil we see and experience in this physical world, the further removed we choose to be from light, the darker and more divided we and our world becomes. These are the hierarchies, but also the names of illusory divisions that prevent us from connecting directly to Source. Everything that is encompassed within Source is both light and dark, and all possibilities are real simultaneously. Source is always a whole, and it just is. Because Source is free to experience itself, and we are created from Source, we too are free to experience ourselves. This is our sacred free will. As such, everyone is free to choose between light and dark. For example, if we go back to a very common religious thought, the idea of the serpent, of Adam and Eve, relates to knowing the difference between light and dark. It was never evil nor original sin, but rather the knowledge of both light and dark, of free will and of choice, that freed humanity. Therefore, choosing one or the other is not going for or against good or evil, but rather with what frequency and wavelength a being attunes itself. I have always and will forever attune myself with love and light. But just as every color, vibration, frequency, and energy is represented in the visible light spectrum, so are people's attunements within the spectrum of light and dark. The spectrum of light and dark is the visible light spectrum, for they are both Source. I do not imply nor overly state that bad behavior is acceptable. I live and breathe in a space of love, and I condemn any acts against love. We cannot be more than we feel at any given time. I feel love, will work forever only within love, and this is my own authority and free will as a sovereign being of Source. As we are all sovereign beings in this universe, whether one works on behalf of light or dark, one is free to do as she or he pleases. We have been gifted free will. Source is free to experience itself, and so are we. Every being, entity, creature in our known universe and those in parallel and unknown universes also have free will, because we are all part of the collective of Source. We can all choose whether to follow light or dark. I cannot tell you how many beings are working on either side, but certainly they are innumerable. The struggle of good and evil, or light and dark, is thus at every level of existence, in all places, realms, universes, galaxies, star systems, planets, and times. Source is omniscient and will never interfere, because a fundamental law of the universe is the law of free will, which can never be taken away by anyone from anyone. The balance between light and dark always shifts. Consider the cyclical nature of golden ages and dark ages. The shifting balance between light and dark is the eternal struggle. The more we cater and allow dark, the darker our collective existence becomes. It is a cosmic, interdimensional, all-time, all-place struggle. Every part of existence, every level, realm, dimension, universe is wholly connected. Separation is an illusion. Everyone is different, and everyone's nature is dictated by many factors, including lives between lives and the lives in other realms, as well as reincarnating on Earth and in other dimensions to bring different levels of knowledge to each realm. Light will favor light, and dark, dark. A misconception about darkness is that it is necessarily evil. If one should have a negative or dark experience in their life, by examining this circumstance from a place of learning and love, it becomes a transformative experience that brings you within the sphere of light, rather than that of darkness. Dark is only an opposite, like the other end of a battery. This is why people change only if they want to, if they're ready. They must allow for light to enter their hearts. Trauma remains in a state of trauma until forgiveness and unconditional love are accepted by the individual, for themselves and for their situations. Love and change cannot be forced. If forced, no change will occur. The forcing of love will be felt by the individual as equal to the forcing of fear or hatred. Love must be accepted as freely as it is given, because love is the highest form of respect towards free will. We were created in the image of Source, because we are Source. Since we are a microcosm of a macrocosm, we are creators on a smaller scale and unfortunately have to abide by the physical laws that regulate our world. Our powers of manifestation are strong, but work differently. As we live in a cause and effect world, we must take physical action to manifest our creations. Perhaps as we ascend closer to Source, our creative capabilities will naturally increase. Energy flows where attention goes. Like attracts like, and equally, opposites attract. This too is awareness. Light expands in all directions, everywhere, all at once. As a result of Source becoming aware of itself, all of creation also continues to expand, in consciousness and otherwise, because with every new experience of becoming aware of oneself and Source, light is spread further. Time is linear, only on physical planes, and each physical plane has a different concept of time. Ours is controlled, moderated, modified, and presented in particular formats for particular goals. Do scientists observing the universe still consider it to be expanding or shrinking? And what does each scenario mean for light? The more light expands, the more light there is, but equally there will be as much darkness, all in equal measure. The eternal battle is not of good and evil, but rather the changing balance between light and dark. For example, when you know what is right, you immediately know what is wrong at the same time, because it is the opposite of right. Because dark exists as the natural opposite of light, it exists in its own measure at every level within Source. By choosing light or dark, do we expand the universe? As in, do we expand Source's awareness, thus extending both light and dark further into reaches unknown? Or, as we choose between light and dark, each soul makes their way to their respective frequencies, thus shrinking the universe into a unified but still dualistic field. Many people are afraid of death, but there's nothing to fear. When we die, we always see and know everything all at once, or our lives flash before us like a movie. We then walk towards light. I cannot say if those who work for the dark walk into an abyss, but they might do so. I'd like to think that light calls to them too, and even in that moment, they are free to choose to follow the light or head in the other direction. Death is only the ending of your physical body, which is your vehicle for accessing this physical plane. Everything else continues on, and in these next realms, you are able to learn from your life on earth and decide if you want to reincarnate, if you need a rest, if you'd like to try a different plane of existence, etc. Source is free to experience itself, and so are we. What Source has and is, we are on a much smaller scale. I've heard it said, and I'm sure you have too, that we choose to be reincarnated here. Some might feel stuck in a cosmic, karmic loop. Many of us search for a purpose, a reason to live in this restrictive, turbulent physical world. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Many might ask in the late hours of the night. What's the point? Others will ask. Some might say there is no point and we don't have a purpose. But then if there is no purpose, no point, why does life persist? If there was no point, there would be no life, and Source would not have become aware of itself. Source would have remained in its silent, dormant state. So, life is the purpose of life. Life exists because Source exists, and Source is all life. There is physical death because that is a natural law of any physical plane. But there is no eternal death because Source exists eternally, and we are a microcosmic scale of Source. By reincarnating, whether on this physical plane, another, or elsewhere, we continuously experience ourselves, and we continuously become aware of ourselves as coming from and being part of Source. If this answer feels unsatisfactory, consider that light is life, and by reincarnating, we bring light, life, and awareness to the darker parts of the universe. Or we reach new heights of light if we tend in the direction of light. Conversely, those who choose to bring darkness to the light parts of the universe consider this to be their mission as well. We do not need to force a purpose. Simply by existing, in whatever form, our purpose is fulfilled. Of course, we can choose in everyday life and after physical death other goals and aspirations, but it is not mandatory that you do anything. Radically, even those who choose darkness are still fulfilling their purpose. Darkness is part of light, inescapable from it, for they're both part of Source. Is there a finite amount of souls in the universe? If awareness of Source created all there is in the universe, is there a finite amount of all things, constantly being recycled in cycles of reincarnation? For example, let's say there are 50 quadrillion souls. Each soul experiences reincarnations in different times, universes, and dimensions. Because our souls do not die, how old are we really? Or if not, how is a new soul created? Can new souls be created? Can we be new to a dimension but not necessarily new to the universe? Is this a conscious process? Does Source orchestrate new creations of souls? If yes, is this a deliberate creation, and why? If Source and us are already aware of itself, why would it choose to create new souls? There is no separation between light and dark, as much as the dark would prefer to be separate from the light. But there is nothing unnatural about acting in opposition, because that is precisely what it is and does. It is fulfilling its function as the opposite of light, as much as light is in opposition to darkness. The eternal struggle of good and evil remains a pervasive division in physical planes more so than in others, and not for any other reason than not understanding that it is all part of the same thing. There are only the illusory divisions we create where everything appears to be individuated and single, where one thing does not immediately appear every time to coincide with another thing. As much as beings of darkness actively separate themselves from the light, this is a fruitless endeavor, for it is impossible to separate from Source. This is the eternal struggle between dark and light. If we lived in an unbalanced universe, in an unbalanced 3D world, all would be chaos. If it were all dark, we would live in constant pitch blackness, while if we lived in all light, we would be surrounded by only light. And in both circumstances, we would be unable to see anything. Objects in our 3D realm would not cast shadows as perfect duplicates of their counterparts. This alone tells you that all is as it should be. We see with our eyes, our minds, our hearts, because both light and dark exist simultaneously. Just as a plant in complete darkness will not grow, neither can anything else without its source of light. And if a plant or creature lives in darkness, it creates its own source of light through bioluminescence. Love is light is life, and life comes from source. Equilibrium is tranquility. We all seek balance and level like water. We are all wholly connected to one another's awareness. Many levels of reality, many planes, many universes, some vying for complete dominance in darkness, others for complete peace and light, others seeking perfect balance or neutrality, and in others, all manner in between. I'm sure you're aware of Plato's cave, but for those who have not seen this before, the man who's holding the puppet of the bird is casting a shadow of the bird on the rock wall, thereby fooling the man who is sitting, creating a shadow and making the man who is sitting believing that that's the actual bird, when it isn't the bird. In neither case, the puppet isn't the real bird, and neither is the shadow. So do not be the puppeteer, nor the individual being fooled by the puppeteer. Instead, be an observant passerby who sees both people equally. Source encompasses all things, including what we would consider good and evil. I recognize that there are acts of evil or dark in this world, that these go against love and light, but I also understand that source is everything. So while I greatly disapprove of those actions that would constitute the pain or suffering of another, I also completely forgive these actions, for they are part of source experiencing itself via our microcosmic level of existence. In other words, when an act against love has occurred, I am disappointed that love was not the chosen emotion and behavior. On every level of my being, I am unable to hate anyone or anything. I can only disapprove of their behavior, forgive them, forgive myself, and move on. It is hatred, fear, and revenge that prolong suffering and the same emotions in others and at all levels of our microcosm. I have personally seen, experienced, and felt darkness, but I will not lower the state of my being to match its behaviors towards me. I choose love for all eternity. I disagree with the methods of darkness, but I am still grateful for the dark, for it is still source, and I love all that is. Although I do believe that source is an appropriate name that I chose, or perhaps is given to me, I also would like to bring attention back to love. Many people wonder where love comes from, and we say from our hearts. But beyond that, I believe it comes from source through our hearts. I understand and see source as the cosmic heart. While the mind can be powerful, it still only thinks. The heart knows. It is this difference that is crucial. The Egyptians also thought that all knowledge, wisdom, personality, and even the soul occurred in the heart. Our microcosmic source heart is our very own heart. That is why true wisdom, unconditional love, and forgiveness come from the heart and not from the mind. As above, so below, so within, so without. Source is all there is. And so these are the next phases of my research and other topics. I'll be looking at what forces are preventing us in our physical reality from connecting to source and why. What are the effects of higher and lower frequencies on space-time? Does a lower frequency necessarily mean a more physically dense being, entity, thing, energy, or dimension, whereas a higher frequency means a purely energetic, as before, being an entity, thing, blah, 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 i.e. 3D physical Earth versus 5D ethereal realm. And these are the topics of study: being afraid of the darkness and the unknown, tinnitus and hearing frequencies, vibration therapy medicine, frequency therapy medicine, color and its effects on humans and the biosphere, lasers and holograms, auras, forbidden knowledge, occult knowledge and alternative history, world events and agendas, free energy in the form of electromagnetic inventions, propulsion systems, acoustic levitation, orgone, energy, vortexes, radionics and scalar wave machines, gravity, quantum mechanics, superposition, CERN and the LHC, the Allais effect, eclipses, and so-called dark matter. As I said, this was just my preliminary research, I guess, or just my initial thoughts on light and source. And there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to research and read and ponder. And if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I'm curious what you all think about this. Questions are welcome. And I'll see you next time.